So right now our game's pretty easy, right? We've got this circle, and if we happen to click on it, or in other words, if the color is red wherever we're clicking, then what happens is we get 1 to the score. Now this introduces some problems, right? Because I'm going to go over here, I'm going to left click, and you can see up here that I'm holding down my left click, and I'm going to drag all the way over here, and as soon as I touch this red circle, boom, I got a point, and I got a point, and I got a point. I haven't even stopped clicking yet. I just have to go over to where my circle is. But that's not what I want. I want my game to be that I actually have to click on the circle, and if I don't click on the circle, then there has to be some, I don't want to get points, there has to be some kind of a consequence. So you could think, well, that's a pretty easy one to solve, right? So if we left click and the color is red, then move the circle and add 1 to your score. So then we can say LF left click and color is not equal to red. So if we left click and we aren't clicking on the circle, then subtract 1 from the score. Okay? That way, if someone's just holding down their mouse on the background, and then they're going to be losing points rather than gaining points. So let's try and see how that works out. So as soon as I left click, oh, I just lost 4 points. But the problem is, now I'm going to try to click on this circle. I'm down to -7. Click on the circle, I'm down to -10. I'm down to -12. And the problem is, before I even have the chance to lift up my mouse button, after I click on the circle, then I'm losing points right away. So if I click on this really quickly, as fast as I can, you can see my score is still at -12. Why? Because I clicked down once, I got the point, it's still going through the loop, the circle got moved, and then my mouse is still down the next time through the loop. So then I subtract the score that I just got. I don't even think that I can click fast enough to get points anymore, right? So that is a pretty big problem. And it's not just because the thing is red. Like, all of this would work just as well if I was down here. So I'm going to just gray this out for a second, comment this out, and say, all right, well, let's use our distance calculation. And we say if we left click and the distance is greater than 30. So if the distance is less than or equal to 30, we must have clicked on the circle. And if the distance is bigger than 30, then we must have missed the circle. So if I run that again, you can see, same thing. I'm clicking as fast as I can, but I'm still getting into the negatives because I can't lift up my mouse button fast enough. So how can we solve that problem? Well, we're going to be able to solve this problem right up here in the input. And the way we're going to do it is with what's called a flag. So I'm going to make a flag and I'm going to call it click. And I'm going to set it to false. And actually what I'm going to need to do is every time I go through my loop, I'm going to say click is false. In other words, I'm going to assume every single time that I'm going through my loop that I'm not clicking. That's kind of what that variable is going to do for me. And now under this input section, we have this event.type. If this event.type means if the type of the event is that we click on the top right corner on the X on our Pygame window, then done is true, right? We're going to exit out of Pygame. Now there's a different kind of event. So we can say elif event.type equals Pygame dot. Now all of this has to be capitalized. You can see if I start typing an M here, it says mouse button down. That's the one we want. Mouse button down. So if the event is that a mouse button gets pressed down, what do we need to do? Well, we're going to say click equals true. So what this is doing is it's saying if the thing that happened is that a mouse button got pressed, then set click equal to true. But this will only happen if the mouse button just got pressed. Okay, if I hold the mouse button down, this is no longer what's happening, right? The mouse button is not being pressed, it's currently pressed down, okay? So this only happens the first time you press down on the mouse button, and it doesn't keep happening if you're holding the mouse button down. So now what we can do is we can go down here as we say, if we left click and the distance is less than 30 and we've clicked. So and click. Or if we left click, so we've found that the mouse button is pressed down and the distance is more than 30 and the mouse has just been pressed. Now I'll show you that this works. So if I'm right here and I click and I hold down the mouse button, I'm still holding that mouse button down, but you can see I'm not adding anything or subtracting anything else from the score. Now if I let up on my mouse button, I click again, you can see now I've subtracted one more from the score. But if I click on my red circle and hold it down, it's moved locations, but it's still not subtracting from my score even though I'm over here and I'm holding down that mouse button still. And if I click again, click again, click again, it doesn't matter how slowly I click. And click down, let go, click down, let go. It doesn't matter anymore because of this part right here. So once again, mouse button down simply means, is this the first time that the mouse has actually been clicked down since the last time? Has the mouse button actually just been clicked down? If it has, then set click to true, and then it comes down here. So click is true because my mouse button has just been pressed, and then it checks, was it also within the circle's radius, and is our left mouse button the one being pressed? If so, move the circle, add one to the score, and it comes down to the end and goes back to the start of our loop. And then, this is really, really important, our click is reset back to false. If I didn't have this click set to false here, then the first time that I click down, click will be set to true, and it will always just keep being true. There's nowhere that it's going to be reset back to false. So that's why I'm resetting this flag called click back to false at the start of the loop. Because at the start of the loop, okay, I'm assuming that you haven't just clicked down, and then it comes down here, did you just click down, or is that mouse button still being held down? If it's still being held down, it's going to skip over this because an event of the mouse button being pressed didn't happen. That happened last time through the loop. Okay, and this works whether you're working with the color or with the distance. It really doesn't matter. So just to prove it to you, we can say and click, and we can add and click. So if we run that again, I've clicked down, I'm still holding it down, I've only lost one from my score, but if I click on the circle, I get one from the score. Okay, so this solves both the problem of constantly changing your score as well as clicking down and dragging across the circle to try to get your points. We actually have to click on the circle itself.